In 2026, a man filed a self-lawsuit in a New York courtroom and won. Judge Maria Lopez ruled in his favor, citing a 1987 statute about self-ownership. But the loophole only existed in theory, making the case a legal paradox. The man, James Flappy Thompson, argued his self was a separate legal entity. Though fictional, the story mirrors real cases where absurdity outsmarted bureaucracy, yet somehow it feels closer to truth than a TikTok lawsuit over a bad haircut. Where did this idea come from? A 2018 meme that joked about self-employment lawsuits, where someone claimed they invented the concept of self-employment, so they're suing themselves for royalties. Then, in 2020, a comedy sketch had a guy in a courtroom yelling, "I'm suing myself for emotional damages caused by my own existence." The judge, confused but legally obligated to listen, said, "Well, if you're the plaintiff and the defendant, do you get double the damages?" The man replied, "No, I get double the confusion." Legal paradoxes are like that. Trying to sue yourself is like trying to prove a math equation wrong by using the same equation. It's a loop so tight, even the guy who wrote the rule book forgot to include it. Hypothetically, if this man existed, he'd probably have a 2023 viral tweet, "I'm suing myself for stealing my own time. I'm also the only witness." Courts would be like, "Wait, are you the victim or the criminal?" And he'd say, "Both. It's a full-time job." In 2023, a guy named Greg, because everyone walked into a courtroom and said, "Your Honor, I'm suing myself for stealing my own time. I'm also the only witness." The judge, who just finished a 12-hour Zoom call with their mom, blinked and said, "Wait, are you the victim or the criminal?" Greg replied, "Both. It's a full-time job." The court tried to call a lawyer, but Greg's lawyer was him. Legal systems are like that, so convoluted, even the people who wrote them don't understand them. Imagine a 2022 comedy film where the protagonist sues himself for tax evasion, only to discover he's the only one who can pay the taxes. The IRS shows up confused, and the guy says, "I'm not dodging taxes, I'm just creatively allocating them." The judge, now sweating, says, "This is the legal system's version of a dog suing its owner for petting it too much." Then there's the 2024 meme where a cat sues itself for knocking over its own water bowl, captioned, "This is the legal system in 3 panels." Courts would be like, how do you prove a person is lying to themselves? Greg, now fully committed, argues, "I'm not lying, I'm just legally ambiguous." The judge, trying to save face, rules, the plaintiff and defendant are one and the same, so we'll award 0 damages. Case closed. Greg, triumphant, says, "See? I won." The court, realizing they just validated a paradox, immediately files a motion to dismiss. But by then, Greg's already booked a speaking tour, "How to Sue Yourself in 10 Easy Steps." Meanwhile, in 2025, a podcast titled "The Man Who Sued Himself and Won," a deep dive into legal absurdity, becomes a hit, despite being 100% fictional. The host, a guy in a bathrobe, says, "Laws are like jokes. Sometimes they're so bad, they're good." And honestly, this whole saga is just the legal system's way of saying we're all just playing pretend. In 2022, a comedy film titled "I Accuse Myself" hit theaters, starring a guy named Darren, who in a moment of existential crisis sues himself for unauthorized use of his own face in a mirror. The plot? A courtroom drama where Darren's lawyer, also Darren, argues that the mirror is a third party, and the judge, after a 10-minute deliberation, rules the case unprovable but legally fascinating. The film's tagline, "The only verdict you'll ever need is 'I'm sorry, I'm not sorry.'" Meanwhile, the IRS got wind of the trend and sent a letter to Darren. "We're not sure if you're evading taxes or just creatively allocating them. Please clarify." The concept became a metaphor for bureaucracy's worst nightmare, a system so tangled it accidentally creates loopholes. Imagine a 2023 tax form that asks, "Have you ever lied to yourself?" with a yes/no box. If you say yes, you get a refund. If you say no, you're taxed for being self-aware. It's the legal system's version of a cursed spreadsheet. Then came the 2024 meme, a cat sitting on a keyboard typing, "I hereby sue myself for knocking over my own water bowl," with the caption, "This is the legal system in 3 panels." It went viral, spawning a subculture of self-suing memes, like a dog barking at a mirror and captioning, "I'm suing my reflection for emotional damages." Courts, meanwhile, tried to ban the trend, but the First Amendment protected the memes. By 2025, a podcast called The Self-Suing Chronicles turned the concept into a weekly show with a host who wore a "I'm both the plaintiff and defendant" t-shirt. Episodes included how to sue yourself for existence and the time a judge tried to dismiss a case and failed. The show's popularity forced the legal community to hold a conference titled Dealing with Self-Suing, a Guide for the Perplexed. They didn't solve anything. They just laughed a lot. The legacy of this fictional farce, it's become the legal world's favorite inside joke. In 2023, a law firm in Nebraska actually added self-suing as a new practice area, just for laughs. Their website reads, "We specialize in cases where the client is both the plaintiff and the defendant." No, really, we're not sure either. Meanwhile, a judge in Ohio tried to ban the concept by ruling it a threat to judicial integrity, only for the case to be dismissed because the plaintiff and defendant were the same person. Justice, baby? The concept also became a metaphor for how laws sometimes create problems just to solve them. Like that one rule from 2024 that said, "You can't sue yourself, but only if you're not the one who wrote the rule." It was so convoluted even the lawmakers who passed it admitted, "We're not sure what this means, but it sounds cool." Then there's the podcast, The Self-Suing Chronicles, which in 2025 hit 10 million downloads. The host, a guy named Kevin, who wears a "I'm both the plaintiff and defendant" t-shirt, once said, "Laws are like jokes. Sometimes they're so bad, they're good." His most popular episode, How to Sue Yourself for Existence. It's basically a how-to guide for people who want to waste a court's time. The real legacy? It's proof that bureaucracy is just a bunch of people trying to sound important while accidentally making everything worse. Like when the IRS tried to tax Greg for self-suing in 2026, only to realize they had no idea how to calculate damages for someone who's both the victim and the criminal. They just sent him a letter that said, "We're not sure if you're evading taxes or just creatively allocating them. Please clarify." And that's the thing. This whole saga isn't about real law. It's about how absurd the system can get when you let people argue about things that don't make sense. Which, honestly, is exactly what the legal system does best. All right, let's wrap this up. So while this whole man suing himself thing is totally made up, it's a hilarious way to show how messed up legal systems can get. Courts are like, "Wait, are you the victim or the criminal?" And the guy's like, "Both. It's a full-time job." The judge, after a long pause, says, "We'll award 0 damages." Case closed, and the guy's like, "See, I won." But then the court files a motion to dismiss because, honestly, they can't handle this nonsense. The legacy? It's become the legal world's favorite inside joke. In 2023, a law firm in Nebraska added self-suing as a new practice area, just for laughs. Their website says, "We specialize in cases where the client is both the plaintiff and the defendant." No, really. We're not sure either. Meanwhile, a judge in Ohio tried to ban the concept only for the case to be dismissed because the plaintiff and defendant were the same person. Justice, baby? The real takeaway? Bureaucracy is just a bunch of people trying to sound important while accidentally making everything worse. Like when the IRS tried to tax Greg for self-suing in 2026, only to realize they had no idea how to calculate damages for someone who's both the victim and the criminal. They just sent him a letter that said, "We're not sure if you're evading taxes or just creatively allocating them. Please clarify. And that's the thing, this whole saga isn't about real law. It's about how absurd the system can get when you let people argue about things that don't make sense.